the audio still working okay?
Yep,
All right,
loud and clear.
perfect.
And Heather, always big thanks for pulling everything together virtually last minute. No,
Of course, no
I was
problem at
looking forward
all.
to dinner, so yeah, there's that.
You could save pizza for January.
All right.
Yeah, I was kind of looking forward to a Mediterranean from backcountry also.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm gonna try to switch my desktop. For anyone curious, I had plugged the monitor into itself. Is why it
Oh,
was
I
not
don't think that
working.
works.
No, turns out causes problems, but here we are.
I'm going to pause the recording since we've still got a couple of minutes to think we're ready to go. Welcome everybody to the December Environmental Advisory Board meeting. Hannah, take it away.
First, let's see, I don't have anything in front of me. We approve the minutes. Oops. Is that what's first?
Oh, sorry, calling the meeting to order.
Call to order the meeting.
Thank you.
I second.
All right.
Wait, right.
And I will go ahead and get the meeting protocols pulled up. Sorry, everyone. Thank you as we are dealing with some tech stuff on the back end. All right, here we go. And it's not going to let me share my screen now. We'll just do it this way. There we go. Can you see my screen?
And
Still no.
Yeah.
yes, we can.
Third time's a charm.
There you go.
All right. Welcome everybody to, like I said, the December EAB meeting. Thanks for your patience as we're virtual tonight. Things are we're a little out of practice. At least I'm a little out of practice with the virtual Zoom format when we're usually in person. Anyways, the city has engaged with community members to co-create a vision for productive, meaningful, and inclusive civic conversations. This vision supports physical and emotional safety for community members, staff, and board members, as well as democracy for people of all ages, identities, lived experiences, and political perspectives. For more information about this vision and the community engagement process, please visit that website seen on your screen, bouldercolorado.gov/services/productive-atmospheres, and the Boulder Revised Code, Section 16B. The city will enforce the rules of decorum found in the Boulder Revised Code, Section 16B, including participants are required to sign up to speak using the name they are commonly known by, and individuals must display their whole name before being allowed to speak online. Currently, only audio testimony is permitted online. No attendee shall disrupt, disturb, or otherwise impede the orderly conduct of any board meeting in a manner that obstructs the business of the meeting. This also includes failing to obey any lawful order of the presiding officer to leave the physical or virtual meeting room or refrain from addressing the board. Only one person at a time may speak during open comment unless an accommodation, like an interpreter, is required. All remarks and testimony shall be limited to matters related to city business. No participant shall make threats or use other forms of intimidation against any person. Obscenity, other epithets based on race, gender, or religion, and other speech and behavior that disrupts or otherwise impedes the meeting will not be tolerated. Because we do not have registration for open and public comment tonight, you can indicate you would like to participate by using the raise hand function. The raise hand button is in the participant box, which can be found in the menu by hovering over the top or the bottom of your screen and then clicking on the participant icon. When the box opens, you will see the raise hand button at the bottom. By clicking that button, you can indicate you would like to participate in open or public comment. If you have joined us by phone, you can press star 9 to raise your hand.
All right, I don't see any attendees. Is that correct, Heather?
That is correct.
Great. So then I'll move motion to approve the minutes from last month.
I'll second.
Wonderful. Great. Our agenda today is annual letter to council, approval of the 2026 meeting schedule, and then some matters from the city, which Jonathan said would take about 20, 30 minutes or so. So we can jump in on the letter. Thanks everyone for getting in the doc. Let me share my screen in case anyone's going to watch this YouTube and wants to follow along. Adam, I went through and made some comments on your great notes.
Yes, thank you for putting this together. And hindsight, I probably should have done this earlier than today, but it was nice to have something to work with.
Yeah. I'd say the overall goal, and you guys should edit this as if it does not kind of hit that, is kind of to frame like the problem and like a broad solution without getting too in the weeds of what they should do. I did add like a potential, we can delete this. I just did this today.
I think Jonathan is trying to say something.
Oh, I can't see people.
Oh, that's okay.
Sorry. There we go.
Thanks. I didn't want to interrupt. Just as a matter for the record, I might suggest doing a quick little introduction for those that may be watching, if they pop on just on the topic of creating the letter for council, just so we have a good record about the conversation, if you don't mind. Thought that might be useful.
Yes, thank you. Sorry.
No, you don't have to apologize. It's just an observation.
Yeah. Great. For the record, this is the biannual, depending on the year, letter to council of the Environmental Advisory Board, scrolling, recommendations of what council should include on their 1-year work plan. So it's just 2026, 12 months, because we're going to do another election next year. And they'll have 10 priorities. And so they reach out to all the different boards and they receive letters of what those boards would recommend. And this is our letter. High level, it is to hire a food policy director that works across departments at the city that integrates both climate and environment from our perspective, but also health equity across all sorts of food programs. So that could be health, emissions, procurement, food waste. We don't really have anyone at the city that manages that. There is some folks at the county. So this person would work with the county, with local nonprofits that are working on these issues and kind of help bring everyone together under one, have some real ownership from a city perspective. So that's kind of the high level of what our letter draft says so far, and kind of goes into a lot more of the sustainability problems to be solved than kind of the other aspects, since it's coming from our board. Did I miss anything, anyone?
That sounds good.
I like that Adam added the emissions thing. That's a really smart idea. So I just wanted to say thank you. And thanks, Hannah, for writing it.
So what our goal today is to generally finish it. We have, a week or so to like do edits in docs, but I think our goal should just be to finish it during this meeting and have it ready to send out, since people were able to review it ahead of time. So I think maybe we can start with the letter, and then we can look at the part I had added to see if it's like a good addendum. Oh, 2 pages is the maximum. Probably shorter the better, generally. So yeah, I'm not like attached to any of this. I think we took some of the work we did last year on the environmental advisory board in our letter and expanded it specifically around this food policy director hire, since it felt like something that was very attainable for a 1 year work plan, besides the hiring freeze currently in place. But hopefully that won't be in place all year.
So one thing, I guess to kick us off is, Hannah, in your perspective, I'd like to understand how you would define kind of a food system and where the city of Boulder kind of plays a role in that, and just understanding your perspective, I think would help me then kind of better understand how to present our recommendations to the council.
Yeah, and I'm not attached to any of this, so please jump in with other ideas. But for me, food systems really is kind of the whole supply chain of food. So from what, bottom, what's grown to end consumer. Obviously, a lot of that's not going to apply to the city because we're not growing all of that food, even though a lot of our farms are kind of in the county. So how do we work in partnership with, for example, like BVSD school food systems, like do really great at getting local food for their schools and working across the region. So kind of having someone that represents the city in those conversations. So that's one aspect of it. But it's also, the health of our citizens. It's food security. So whether there's like, I don't know, just some issue around food security for our community, food waste is a huge part of that, where you have a lot of expertise. Procurement. So a lot of cities like run their school programs and run their jails and like run senior housing and all these different places that procure food. City of Boulder doesn't do that. It would just be really like what they're buying for city staff and city events. It's much smaller than a lot of other cities that have food policy work, because they're doing much more food purchasing. And that's usually where a lot of the leverage is. But I still think there's a lot that can be done within the city's procurement. And then again, it's like a liaison that would work with CU CU Boulder is doing some great stuff already. And like BVSD, for example, is probably the leading school in the whole country. So what can we learn from them? And then of course, working with the county and our farmers that are in the county. I don't know if there's any in Boulder, city of Boulder or not. I know we have a lot of land that's managed, but I don't know.
Okay. And is the city of Boulder involved in many of like the food banks or like the the pantries?
Yeah. I don't know. That's a great question. My guess would be not.
Yeah.
Jonathan, otherwise, but my guess is not. So yeah, someone that is working with those programs. Like I know Boulder Food Rescue is kind of created right now. I forget what they're calling it, but they're trying to bring together all the foods need organizations like EFA, for example, and really support them and help make sure resources get where they need to be. So someone who could work with those programs. Like there is a food person at the county, for example. So having someone at the city that would work with the county and work with these organizations to help make sure that all of our community members are getting what they need. And it probably would still weigh on these nonprofits, I imagine. But are there certain policies or taxes or anything like I don't know. I would not be the hire for this role. But I do wonder, what could they do that other cities have done?
Because based off of what I read and the links that you put in there, the main, I think, like the two areas where you can have an intervention is on the selection. So like finding alternatives to meat and dairy, just given the high land use and methane emissions. So that would be, covering the gamut of a selection, I guess. And then the other one is the local, buy local, which I think based on the information, um, given the low emissions profile of that, I don't want to like hang our hat on that particular aspect if it's not really a convincing argument or a strong argument that you have lower emissions in transporting it. I think it could be local. There's some other kind of aspects, some other value proposition with the buy local.
Right. I think that's for like the economy of our local community, as well as like the health of the food. Fresh food has more nutrients in it, and sustainably grown food has more nutrients in it. But you're right, it wouldn't be a emissions reason.
Yeah. Because
Except
that's
for maybe for local meat. There's a lot of local meat. And so that would probably be more of that argument.
Yeah, so it looks like the venues in which the city could play a role is with the or maybe the county, I guess, well, depending on how you want to view it, is the Boulder Valley School District, and how they make their selections and where they procure their suppliers. So I think looking at like the selection profile as well as the proximity of that could be two areas where the city would play a role.
Well, BVSD is actually not, the city is not in charge of BVSD. They're their own. It's kind of different than other places.
Yeah.
And I also will say with this, I think, and I'm curious what you guys thought, like, I kind of want to keep the letter like high level of like just hire a food director.
Yep.
Versus like really prescriptive, and maybe that means some of the stuff I put in here already should come out. So like not saying this is what they should do exactly, but more just like this is why it's important. If that makes sense.
Yeah. Jonathan has his hand up, so.
Sorry, I see everyone's picture except for Jonathan's.
Jonathan's hand is up though.
Totally fine. I only when there's an opening.
Okay. Well, I was just gonna agree with what Hannah just said. Is I think my preference would be to keep it sort of broad, and I think I'm not sure how much movement there will be with this hire, but it shows to the city council that this is an important topic, right? And I see like in the fourth paragraph, I think in the letter, basically, policy director would enable Boulder to take comprehensive system styles approach, one that simultaneously supports sustainability, public health, and food equity. It's just high level, super high level, just kind of gets to, we believe this is important. This is a place that we can make an impact, and let's try and make that change.
My only hesitation is that I'm trying to get a sense of the purview in which the city could play a potential role. And if it's very small, given that it's only for city, procurement or purchasing decisions, then I'm like, would it require a food policy director? And so that's my hesitation, is that if we're suggesting that we have someone in there, I would want to have some type of sense of how much substantive work they would be able to be engaged with. Now, there could be a liaison that would work with the school district, or if like a partnership, like if there was an option to have more farmland on open space that went to address food insecurity or food equity, then I could see, okay, yeah, there's an opportunity to play a role. But if it's just as small as guidelines for policy for food purchases from a municipal standpoint, I'm just a little bit hesitant to then recommend a policy director position. That's my initial reaction.
Would the policy coordinator sound any
program manager? Program manager sounds less daunting. But I was gonna say, I think the role is much more than that. Because like for example, when I was in high school, I was able to start community gardens at my high school. And while I understand that Boulder Valley School District is its own thing, I still got like funding from my city where my high school was to do this because of a role that was fighting food insecurity. And so there's a whole like policy side to this. Like other cities, when SNAP benefits went away, it was like one person was able to really like jump in and take charge and make sure that everyone got food. And I know the governor Colorado tried to do that and send emergency funding, and like some of the food banks stepped up. But if there had been one person like who could look at benefits that people are on, like have access to that data, it's kind of like the health equity side. And then like you said, like the policies for the city, and then also some type of, I see a lot of like land partnerships. For example, I think it's like North Boulder, there's like a whole urban farm there. I understand that's private, like nonprofit land, growing gardens farm area, but like that's an trust. Jonathan probably knows more about this than I do, but it's like entrusted that it has to be urban farmland for at least 100 years, I think is what they were telling me last time I was there. And so I think like things like that, where people can have community plots, not only does that reduce emissions because you're growing your own food, you're composting, all those things, but also reduces that supply chain. So a little bit of there could be like a whole education side on top of a resource coordination, and then that procurement, and then Jonathan, Adam, I really like to think this bothers me to no end coming from California. I can't compost my food. I don't know if I've misunderstood the policy or my landlord did something weird. Jonathan's nodding, like whoever told you that was lying to you. But at least my landlord doesn't let us put food waste in our compost bin for our apartment building. And so, and that I've heard that from a lot of other people who are like students or live on the hill or downtown Boulder. So, because I asked so many people when I first moved here. And so, like, just like someone keeping track of those policies, because I see Jonathan saying that's not the policy. But I know I'm not the only one who has this from their landlord as a rule that they're not allowed to do. Or they'll they said they'll fine us. And so, yeah, and I've heard this from multiple people who rent specifically. So just like I think there's a whole like education side of it too, of like what's the actual rules as well.
So
I really like that.
m-
Yeah, go ahead,
maybe
Jonathan.
Yeah, no, thank you. These are excellent points and really good questions. And I wanted to maybe add a little color, I think, Adam, to your excellent question about what the purpose and role of a position might entail in terms of what is the purview within the city. You started with a question, or someone asked a question about food banks specifically, and I think Hannah was absolutely right. While the city doesn't oversee the food banks, we do coordinate and work with them directly through a lot of our assistance programs through our housing department. So those are like emergency family assistance programs, a Harvest of Hope, food pantry, community food share. These are obviously sites, but there are a lot of smaller organizations that the city does provide some funding to, and my department is included in that. There are Boulder County resources, obviously. This is all around accessibility to food. But I want to pick up on Hannah's point too, which is in terms of what the city's role could be, I think it's yet to be determined. I mean, food is a big concept. And so you could explore lots of dimensions, accessibility, access to healthy foods, the ability to grow locally. And so Hannah's point about policy is a good one, that we look at our land use policies. Are they both encouraging and enabling people to grow locally, whether that's right-of-way gardening, whether that's hoop houses, greenhouses, what kind of regulation would allow people to do more of their own? I think there is also this big waste piece that we know is, I think, problematic. And Hannah, just as a PSA, I'll just give you the 20-second view. Boulder has had one of the longest standing organics collections programs in the country. Just like all Front Range cities, a couple of years ago when we saw increased contamination at our processor, A1 Organics, they stopped collecting all materials that were not food scraps and yard waste. And so that meant commercial composting was not allowed to be delivered. So when you think about commercial, usually multifamily housing is considered commercial. Our ordinance requires restaurants and apartments to offer composting. And so what you might be experiencing is a little bit of a misinterpretation of what they are required to do. But if they offer any kind of composting service or collection, it's absolutely for food waste and yard waste. What we don't allow right now because of our process are those front of house things that you see at restaurants, bags, and we are working on an alternative to that program right now because every city is in that position right now. So I just wanted to make that clear. And then the last thing I wanted to say here is that I think there's a strong role for the city as we've been doing a lot of work engaging with the community in the resilience space. We talk with our communities and our neighborhoods about what they need during times of emergency. And oftentimes we hear access to healthy foods. There are challenges in terms of accessibility. So what can the city do as we build in that resilience structure, as we think about building resilience hubs and sites that people gather? There's a real important role there for food. So I would just say that there are a lot of connections, and then I really appreciate that you all are thinking about, the impact associated with food miles traveled and how we actually secure and procure food. I think I'll end by saying what I started with, which I don't know it's fully fleshed out yet. All I know is that over and over again, we hear that we need to be putting some effort into the food system or the food initiatives locally, and the city has a lot of roles that they can play. Sorry, that was long-winded, but I think those are really good questions.
So based off of that, Jonathan, that's helpful to know. Maybe we could say on the outset that they're kind of like is a dual role. One is to influence or have this kind of policy kind of aspect where this in places where the city interacts with other organizations, either through funding or coordinating. And what they can do is we could say, okay, based on the priorities of the council, here's some of the areas that you can play in. We can look at, the emissions profile and how that would affect selections of different types of foods. We can look at the grow local perspective, and then we can also look at accessibility. So if we kind of say, here are kind of the three categories that we're looking at, emissions profile, local sourcing, and then access to healthy foods. And then that will kind of guide that will be kind of our policy foundation, and then we'll implement that with the different organizations that the city works with, either directly or, by some type of educational campaign or informational some information marketing or something like that. And then that can kind of keep it at a high level, I guess, and then they can interpret it where it makes sense to implement that. At least that's how I would maybe see it.
Okay, great. I wrote that what you said down up here. It's just I didn't want to integrate it real time.
Yeah.
Jonathan, is your hand new hand or? Oh, okay.
Old hand. Teams automatically lowers it. Zoom does not. Good use of it.
Because I really like the idea of the city of like, using the tools and the data that it has of, okay, here is, like, how do you measure what a food desert is, or, access to food, or, equity, or, access to, cultural appropriate food, or, and how much is local versus. And so if you have a place to go to where you can get that information, then the different groups that participate in it, you all have a common understanding of what's going on. The city provides that purview. So you have that, like that analysis perspective. And then you also have the policy, like what are our objectives? Are we trying to, source food with lower emissions? Are we trying to have more nutrient locally sourced? If those are the priorities, then we can kind of push those, and those may change over time. But at least you have like a shop where you can go to the information to then identify, okay, within the food system, what are the different dynamics in terms of access and local versus purchased outside the state or whatnot, and a level of nutrients or affordability or, all those kind of questions that would enable you to get an insight into how is the food system working.
Sorry, it takes me forever to get off mute. Great. I wrote all that down. Anyone else have thoughts?
Oh, and the other thing is, I would love, so I was grappling with this because I did a white paper on Boulder's recycling and composting program. And it was basically just a personal interest to become more familiar and learn about the composting and organics system and A1 Organics. And I think it's working well. I just wanted to say, I don't know if the food policy director would be part of it, but I thought it would be nice to like expand the purview of what is the highest and the best use for the organics waste. Right now it's going into composting, but should we consider anaerobic digestion to create biogas and then ultimately methane? Natural gas to power electrical facility? Could it be used in pyrolysis to create biochar? Could it be used for bioplastics? All these other options. So I just want to say one thing that, maybe it's not a position, but I'd have a lot of interest in exploring additional options for the food waste beyond composting and say, is there another, path that we should consider that would provide some value to the city?
Yeah, and I imagine that this person would work with our amazing waste team and collaborate for sure.
Maybe
Okay.
to keep it high level, we can link your research in there, but then just put like one line like to manage food waste on top of like the food systems, like thinking about food as a full system, like waste as well, including composting and other alternatives to make sure it's as efficient and
Yeah,
list some of the things that you listed. And then they can go read about it and link to your paper. Because I think it's a really good idea. And there's like a lot of that also plays into the economic development side of having a good food system because can you sell those materials or can you invest in companies with that or provide the materials to a really cool startup doing something really interesting. So I think there's a whole like circular economy side to it too. So it's really interesting.
do you guys think that so not gonna lie, ChatGPT wrote this part right here. I did write the other part. But do you think to that point, like, do you think this is a helpful like addendum of like this is just an example? This is not, we're not, we'd make it more clear that like just to paint a little bit of a picture for council of like what would the city do? Because I did add that here of examples of types of things they could do. And I put that comment you had made into the food waste. Oversee is not the right, it'd be more like coordinate with. But do you guys think this is like too much? It would be like the letter page 1, and then this would just be like an example page 2. And we'd probably need to wordsmith it since ChatGPT.
Yeah, I'd like to review it and kind of chew on it a little bit and see if
Yeah.
this is kind of like within the arena where the city would play a role.
Yeah, we can change these. I guess it's more, we can say like high level. Do you think this would make our letter stronger if we included some examples? Or do you think people would be like, oh no, I don't think they should do this, and maybe be turned off by it because they're thinking,
Yeah,
getting too detailed.
I think I would just want to better understand what these work areas are and if this is something the city could really play a role in. And if so, then, just keep it kind of high level, but I need to kind of think it over and say, okay, is this where the city would participate and could make a contribution? One
Anyone
thing I
else
would
have
maybe
thoughts on that? I know you haven't all read it, but someone chatted.
Sorry, I'm reading it right now live.
One other idea I had was, what do you think about adding the word systems to it, a city food systems? That would mean that it's not only the procurement of it and the production of it, but then also managing the waste. And so if you had kind of, if that's what you
Yeah.
call a system, like the life cycle of food, then you'd have the, purchase and you know, uh,
Yeah, great. I like that.
sourcing and then the management of the waste. So it covers all aspects of the life cycle of food.
I'm also for Jonathan's comment, I'm changing it from director to position because I think that's right to keep it even broader. Doesn't matter what the title is. And I'll change it to food systems. Did you say food systems policy? Right?
I think so.
Okay.
Food systems policy.
Oh, this was an example actually. If anyone's wondering why this isn't here, it's going to be deleted, but this is from the New York City food policy position. And honestly, I was like, man, we should just copy and paste this because it's quite good in terms of what we also want.
Well, we could say something like similar to the New York City food policy,
Yeah,
and put
that's a
that,
good idea because it's just a web thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd like to read through that and get a sense of things, but I think in my mind it's like when you think of like someone who has their pulse on the food systems or the food system in Boulder, that's who you go to. So the nonprofits, the BVSD, the grocery stores, the chains, the different food banks, like they all kind of are connected to this person who is kind of the expert or has a sense of what's going on. And they can explain, who's involved and they kind of coordinate, working and saying, oh, you should talk to that person. So it's kind of like one-stop shop. I think there's a lot of value in that coordinated effort.
I would say, Hannah, back to your original question. I like that idea of them, but yeah, I just would want to read through them and we can wordsmith it a little bit. But I think the idea of just having some ideas of like how it would address some of the challenges, and maybe we can even link it to some of the broader Boulder Valley like comprehensive plan as well. So it's like linking to either our city plans, like resilience and other solutions, and so really just tying it into like the city's own county strategy as well in this section of like how it meets those priorities.
Great. Yeah, I think the goal would be like a headline and one sentence and just kind of be like, this is not what you have to do. It's just if they happen to have the same question Adam did of like, well, what can the city even do? Then we're kind of answering that question. Okay, so maybe with this, what we'll do, let's see, it's due the 19th, I believe. Okay.
So should we set a deadline in which we add our comments in?
I think maybe 1 week from today. And then I'll give us 1 week after that to clean it up.
Could we have it done? Could we have it done by the 12th?
Why?
Well, my wife and my wife's birthdays are on the 9th and 10th.
So you can get it done by the 8th. Yeah, that's fine.
All right. So if we have all our comments in by the 12th.
And then actually, if you, well, you could do it either way, but the preference, if you have a strong opinion on actual wording, then
Mhm.
use the editing tool and suggestion it's called, and
Okay.
like actually write what you want in there. This tool here, suggestion, versus just saying add this or whatever.
So you want us to put in full sentences where rather than leave in comments, right?
If you have strong opinions about
Yeah.
it,
That's-
or
Mhm.
or like some sort of expertise that would be more helpful if you wrote specifically. I think we'll have 1 week from there to like narrow it down, and then that is what we need to discuss how that's going to happen, because that's just like slightly complicated. I think generally what happened last time is I accepted pretty much all the changes people added and changed were accepted, for the most part, except for maybe like a few that were contradicting or something like that. But when you see what other people add and stuff, try to, if you disagree with it or anything, comment in there so I know like not everyone's on board to accept that, or I guess I'll just do my best to represent everyone's.
So I mean, everyone can put in their comments before, by the 10th. I just I wanted to give myself a little bit of time, but maybe Hannah, if if the rest of the board members, if we put in our comments and then the week of the 15th, you go in and then wordsmith it and then send it off by the 19th.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
Okay, all right.
And then I'll try to wordsmith it, send it back to you guys one more time. But ideally, I'm more just like accepting what you guys have actually written versus like having too much. And then I'll kind of accept comments and stuff based on the discussion today to make sure it's aligned with kind of what we all talked about, around kind of keeping it high level and everything.
Mm-hmm. Sounds good.
Any other things to around the letter anyone wants to say?
Well, this is good.
Cool.
Good discussion.
Great. If they don't hire it next year, just send it again in 2027.
They finally just give in just so that you stop sending them the same letter.
Exactly.
They're like, fine, we'll get some college intern and give them this title.
Exactly. I did meet with most of council actually on a separate thing, but some food stuff. And a lot of them are very into the like local, like they're all like, yeah, I want to support local food. I'm like, well, that's not actually what I'm here to talk about. But so there was some like excitement around it.
You get people with like organic and local food, and then you're like, actually, food security and food waste.
Yeah. Okay, well, let me go back to our agenda then. It sounds like we're good. Okay, approval of the 2026 EA. I can stop sharing my screen now. EAB meeting schedule. I'm sure that must be somewhere in this. Oh, here we go. Shoot, I have it open on the wrong computer. 1 second, please. So I can share the schedule with you all. And Heather, is this like something we have to do? Like, can we still change these, I guess,
Yes.
if something comes up, or?
Yes, we can still change it. Just a little additional context. There has recently been a request from our city clerk's office to understand what dates each board meets for 2026 or plans to meet, so that they can start inputting those dates into our agenda management system. So we don't typically do this early in the or ahead of the new year. Typically, we just schedule them the first Wednesday of each month and then adjust as needed. However, I went ahead and looked at what those first Wednesday of the month dates would be and then looked for any potential conflicts. So that's what you see here.
So thank you for doing that. Okay, I'm just looking. You already looked at conflict, so I don't need to. Do we need to approve? Is this like a vote we should do?
I don't think that you have to vote on this specifically. I guess I would say this, that if there's any, well, let me back up and say what Heather said is accurate. These are the dates that we want to submit to the clerk. We can always change them as we move forward. But if there is any opposition to any of these dates, I know it's very hard to think about what you're going to be doing 8 to 12 months from now. But if there's anything that pops for any of you, it's why we wanted to provide this in advance. And if there's any opposition to us providing this to the clerk, please say so, knowing full well that we can change the schedule as we move along. So it's kind of a no regret option.
Works for me.
Yeah.
Heather,
So
that work for you?
Yes, that works for me.
Okay.
Next up, we have matters from the city. Over to you, Jonathan.
Oh, yeah. Okay, good. So I don't know that this will take all that much time, but I wanted to bring back a little bit of, I think, a little bit of a debrief. The last time we met, it was the day before we were presenting the updated climate action plan to City Council. And so I thought it would be useful to talk with you about how that went, what we heard from Council, and some of the next steps. All in all, I will say it was an incredibly productive evening with Council. We're going to show you how we kicked off that meeting in just a moment, but high level, just to kind of refresh your memory. We had talked to you all some months ago about the fact that this was a council priority, and we've been working on this now for about a year and a half, just to think about what opportunity does this present us to really reframe and refresh our climate action plan. And one of the things I will just share with you that's been really interesting is, as we got further into having discussions with our community about what the plan actually represents, and how they can see themselves in it, it gave us a lot of new opportunity to think about how we utilize the climate action plan. One of the things that has always been a little bit of a pain point for us is really recognizing that the CAP is intended to be this consolidated list of the different strategies, our goals, what we're trying to get to, what's the roadmap on getting there, when we don't control all of those factors. Meaning when I say we, that's the city. Certainly, we don't control all of those factors. We need a lot of investment and participation from community to achieve a lot of those goals. We need participation from business. But as local government, we do control a lot of the factors. We can pull some of those levers. And then there are factors that are outside our control completely. And that's why we advocate for policy changes at the state level, for example. So it also gave us the point is that it gave us a really distinct opportunity to clarify what the climate action plan is and who it represents and what body of work needs to go into it. And then my department really is designing its own strategic plan to say we as a department play a role in this. We coordinate internally across various departments, and we also coordinate and offer and facilitate programming into the community. So one of the things that I think was most notable in this update was really what we describe as the whole of government approach, meaning that we need every department across the city organization to be playing a really particular role in advancing climate work. And I would say very pointedly that all departments have really stepped up to that challenge. We have some departments like Open Space who has created their own climate action plan that aligns with the broader community plan. We now work very closely with Parks and Recreation. They have always been a champion of natural spaces and managing ecosystems, but aligning targets within their master plan, and the climate action plan. So it's this great opportunity to do this great alignment. And we were able to do that through a lot of the work. Kate Galbo, I think you've met Kate previously. She mapped this work across the organization to see if we care about water and why water connects to climate. Do we anticipate to pull all of the water policy and strategies into the CAP? No, they live elsewhere. They live in the strategic plan. They live in the drought plan, the water supply plan that you heard about last month. So the intention there is to really acknowledge that there's a whole ecosystem that exists in plans, and we then work to align a lot of the targets, the goals, and the actions, and the KPIs, quite frankly. So really advancing that whole of government approach was, I think, one of the biggest new additions to the climate action plan. So that was super helpful. We also added a lot more accountability and rigor into the plan and I shared, this isn't new to any of you, really listing out a lot of KPIs, which is we have big moves in each of the thematic areas. So in energy, what are the big moves that are really going to help us achieve our goals? In nature-based solutions, for example. And so being able to identify the buckets, what are the big moves? What's it going to take to actually achieve those big moves? And so all this was laid out in the presentation with council. I'm going to pause and I'm going to have Heather queue up how we kick this off. And then I want to come back and give you a little bit more. But one of the things that we've heard for a while is when we talk about climate work, there is this long-standing challenge that we have that it's inaccessible in language. It's very technical, jargony language. And I think many people believe that to take any meaningful action on climate, you have to be a climate scientist, you have to be an energy expert. And part of that is really reflected in our desire to do more around youth engagement. And so over the past couple of years, we've had some really interesting opportunities where we led a youth climate summit just before COVID. And it's been hard to get our feet under us since then to really, really accelerate in the youth space. And so we, by having our new engagement specialist, Erin Wagner, on board, she has done some great work in this space when she was with Parks and Recreation. And so she's been leading a lot of that for us. And so all that to say, we wanted to kick things off with council a little bit differently, and that's kind of normal for us. We know that usually we're at the end of a meeting. They've had a very difficult conversation, very policy heavy, and they're a bit tired. And so we just wanted to do a little bit of a reset. And so a little cue up here, and then I'll tell Heather to press go. This was an idea that was curated by both our engagement specialist and specifically our communications specialist, who actually put this all together. And I'll tell you more about it. I don't want to say anything more. Heather, you want to go ahead and pull it up?
Yes, and as I start this, please let me know if you can't hear the sound because it sometimes gets a little finicky.
Sure. It's about 4.5 minutes, so feel free to eat your dinner.
Sorry, it's not letting me select the option to share the sound.
Of course. I get it all hyped up, and then we have technical difficulties.
Is there sound?
Not yet. No.
Okay, let me try it one more time. Sorry.
No, that's okay. We did some of this tech troubleshooting just before, but it just goes to show you. And if it doesn't work, Heather, we can always send it out.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, my apologies. It's not allowing me to add the sound.
No problem.
Would you like to watch it without the sound? It's still, I think, quite impressive.
What if you just emailed it right now and we all watched it?
Could do that.
Sure.
I think sound would be nice.
Yeah, I think it's kind of important.
Yeah. And let me actually close this and try it one more time. Sometimes just a little reset can be helpful.
Heather, where is the video located online? Because I may be able to share my screen and
I don't think that we have it up on the website yet.
because I think I've seen this video though, but maybe I'm
Well,
wrong.
what I can do, Adam, is let me try to email it to you. It's
Okay.
kind of a large file, so I'm hesitant to drop it into the chat. Um, and let's see if you're able to share it that way. I can share my screen, but there's a button to, um, it's too big for me to share. Okay, we will revisit this. I will, once we post it online, we can send out a link to it.
Yeah,
And
no problem. Yeah,
sorry
we
about
can
that.
just move on. No sweat. I'll just give you a little bit of the teaser. So Lyra Nickley, who is our communication specialist, just brought this idea of writing a children's book, and then was able to work with a local company to actually animate it. And the intention here is to really help understand the role that young people do play, and it was an opportunity for young people to connect in to this work, and it's really beautiful. And our hope is, I will say this too, that this was actually spurred by some work that we did. If anybody went to the Scott Carpenter event that we had some months ago, where all city departments were represented, and we had an interactive display where young people could choose to be a climate superhero. And so they, through that process, identified some characters, and we wanted to continue that on. And so that's what the video really showcases. And so the cool thing is that we hope to just continue to use this video and offer it up to schools, different classrooms, different organizations, to kind of continue to build the story out. So once you see it, you'll see what I mean. It's a beautiful story just about the work that we've been trying to do here locally in our key focus areas. So I'll just leave it at that and move on. As far as next steps, one of the things that we did share with council is that a lot of the work up to this point has really been refining a lot of the data, a lot of the technical components of the climate action plan. But knowing full well, we've gone out and done a lot of engagement with community members and organizations who are critical partners. So we haven't really launched the CAP yet. Part of the next phase as we move into next year is really working with those organizations and those individuals to really understand how we can make it more accessible, how they can actually see themselves participating in climate work. And so this is somewhat different than what we've done previously, where you just kind of write a plan. There's a lot of charts and graphs. There's a lot of specific strategies. And then it's a great plan that sits there until you update it the next time. We really want to make this a living document, something that's more interactive, really values-based. And Heather has her hand up.
I think I fixed it. So let's give it a shot.
Okay. Now we don't see the video. Oh, no, wait, now we do.
You do? And can you hear it?
Try again. Yes.
Now
Perfect.
it's stories time. Today's story is The Little City That Could, Boulder's Big Adventure. Enjoy!
The Little City That Could, Boulder's Big Adventure.
Once upon a time, tucked between tall, rugged mountains and wide open skies, there lived a little city named Boulder.
Hey, Heather, I'm going to suggest maybe it's
She
really
loves the
choppy.
sunshine on her rooftops, the cool shade.
Is it choppy for the rest of you? Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
we'll send it out. You can watch it on your own. I think Heather just sent the link to it. Yeah, it's just kind of buffering, and I don't want to take the time to do that. But if you do have questions about it and have thoughts, please let us know. We are excited about it, and I think council was they appreciated just a different way of communicating our climate work. So all that said, I think I just finished up by telling you that phase one really kicks off in January. We will be taking back some new targets, some updated targets to council because we have codified those by resolution. So we'll need to take those back to council. And I anticipate bringing those to the board so you can get an idea of what we're proposing and why we think they're the right targets. So I'll just stop there. I could just keep talking about it, but I don't think that's necessary. If any of you watched the session, it was fairly late, which is totally fine. There were some good questions, linkage, obviously, to the Boulder Valley Comp Plan, how we intend to really make progress on some of the other areas that are a little bit more challenging in terms of, say, natural gas transportation. And so we were able to kind of respond to those in real time, but we still have some work to do before we launch in another month or so. But just wanted to open up, see if there are questions, comments, concerns, thoughts, any of the above. If you watched it, if you didn't, I'm happy to field anything.
I was just really curious if you plan to bring back the youth summit, because I went to something like that when I was a high schooler, and look at me now. So like, I'm kidding. But I found like things like that like really impactful. And one thing I really appreciate about this is I think when I was learning about climate change, it was like anxiety driven, whereas this seems much more positive and maybe
Sure.
less like those of us who are in the like Greta Thunberg area, who I respect her and admire her so much, but like we're in the like disaster anxiety, like climate anxiety phase, and this seems much more like positive, which I really appreciate as well. And then yeah, curious if you would ever bring back the summit or like something for the high school or middle schoolers just in the city, because I think that could be cool. Or like engaging people who serve on student government, or if people have like green something at their schools or something like that.
Yeah, Hannah, thanks for the question. The answer is yes. And what we've done is a little bit different. Instead of being the main sponsor as government, we've supported our partner organizations like Classrooms for Climate.
Oh, really cool. Yep.
And so we work with them directly. We've rebranded, rather than just calling it Climate All of the Time, partnering with the school district and C4C to launch the Resilience Summit. And so Boulder High hosted that just a handful of months ago. And so obviously it's climate focused, but it really was more forward leaning, thinking about the future. What does it mean to be resilient? And obviously it was being resilient to climate impacts. And so, yes, but we're trying to be a little bit more strategic rather than doing one big thing and inviting a lot of people to it, trying to do it a little bit more intentionally within existing curricula, with existing schools. And so Darren on our team has been thinking a little bit about what a broader and reboot of a youth strategy would look like. And I'd love to bring her to the board and have her talk about some of her ideas, because she's really creative. So great question. Thank you.
That sounds really exciting. I think it's a really positive overall work. So.
Happy to field anything else. Just wanted to make sure I was closing the loop with all of you. Okay.
Excited to watch the video, that's all.
Yeah, now we've hyped it up a lot.
Yeah, totally.
And Lyra is also the narrator too. So
the question is, Jonathan,
wrote, directed, and narrated.
Jonathan, are you in the video? That's the question.
Oh no, thank goodness for that. Okay, so that didn't take that long. Happy to move on.
I think it's just calendar preview and then any general announcements.
Oh yeah, thank you. Yeah, so looking ahead, there isn't anything specific that I wanted to flag for you. A couple things coming up on the 18th that just for you all to be tracking. The first of which is, we've talked, I think, a number of times about council's desire to send a letter to Xcel Energy that really is memorializing a lot of the concerns, thoughts, questions about the partnership that they talked about earlier this year back in a study session in March. Council discussed this again on November 6th, the same evening as the Climate Action Plan update. And so we have drafted that letter. They directed staff to draft a letter, and we've done so, and we'll be taking that back to council on December 18th for their consideration. It'll be a motion for us to send a letter to Excel leadership. The other thing that will happen on the 18th, I just wanted you also to be tracking. You've seen a couple of presentations now from staff related to the update to the landscape codes, the water and fire-wise landscape code. And so if you recall, the last time council talked about it, there were a lot of questions, a lot of thoughts, and they postponed any action on that ordinance. And so they continued their discussion to the 18th. And so they'll be bringing that back. And just as a matter of clarification, I just want to make sure for the record that there isn't confusion around some of the landscaping requirements. If you recall, the ordinance gives the city manager the authority to be a little bit more fluid and flexible in terms of what gets enacted in terms of policy and regulation, see how that works for the community, be able to dial things up and down accordingly. And so that authority, in many cases with policies, do lie with the city manager, gives the city manager the authority to do that. So that's what's going to be happening on the 18th. So I just wanted to make it clear that the landscape, like the approved plant list and the things that you saw before you, those aren't necessarily going into rules just yet. Those will then be the basis for the city manager to really evaluate what goes into rules. So that also happens on the 18th. And then if you look ahead, there's not a lot just yet, but I anticipate a good amount of items coming forward that we're going to get the EAB in the pipeline before they go to council as we go into Q1. As I've shared with you previously, staff meet on a quarterly basis. We do a look ahead to say what kind of things are coming up, what are priorities that need to go to council, and we flag those things to say, let's make sure that the EAB and you all get a chance to look at those before. So I think at your next meeting, we'll have a little bit more solid calendar so we can take a look. And I'd also like to spend time, if you all feel it's appropriate, one of your upcoming meetings, really trying to map out some of the topics that you'd like to see come before you in 2026 so we can make sure to have staff teams get those things ready for you. So if there's something on the council calendar that you see that you want to talk about, feel free to bring it up now. But those were the two that I wanted to make sure you were tracking. And I think that's all from staff.
Okay. The next meeting is January 7th at 6 p.m. And I hope Adam and his wife have great birthdays back to back parties and everyone has good holidays and New Year's. So motion to adjourn.
Second.
Great. And don't forget Google Doc, December 12th.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay.
Thanks, everybody.
All right. Thank you.
Thank
Good night.
you.
All right.
Bye.
Appreciate it.